I'm Miya Masaoka. I am a composer, a sound artist, and I want to thank Tanya Leon and Composers Now for this opportunity to interview three really interesting, extraordinary artists, Patricia Alessandrini, Guillermo Galindo, and James Fay. Each are very different in their work and practice and approaches to composition. Some of them focus on performance works, conceptual works, chamber works with voice and artificial intelligence. I've also been asked to introduce my own works, and I will play three excerpts of my pieces. The first one is an orchestra piece entitled "The Energy Burns from Within," and the matter of energy in this musical context can be expressed in frequencies in the spectrum overtone series, the frequency of vibration, which is what is this frequency and audible manifestation on a different scale, this relationship and proportion. The energy, I think, is a kind of materiality that you can create music with. Moving away from a more literal idea of pitch, there's a really rich area of possibilities. And then again, during COVID, we had our own personal, individual, finite amount of energy that we needed to, that we depended on, like a slow burn, if you will. And this piece, this orchestra piece, works with microtones constantly shifting, never static, and these shifting kinds of intertonality situations of frequency I find infinitely inspired and interesting to work with. There's another clip I have called "The Dust and the Noise," and this was recently performed by Documenta, who did a fantastic job. But this clip I'm showing is also by Either Or, who originally commissioned the piece. It's for 4 musicians: cello, violin, piano, and percussion. And the third piece that I will have a clip of is I did a Fulbright to Japan and studied No music and movement and voice, and studied with one of the few women No practitioners on the No stage of a very old No school, the Kansai school. Her name is Hisa Uzawa, and I wrote a new No opera for 2 No players. And one of them is a national treasure of Japan. And so you'll see the clip of the rehearsal that we did in Japan right before the COVID lockdown before March 2020. And unfortunately, the 2 performances have been canceled due to visa issues with COVID, etc. But I think that the rehearsal tapes are quite dynamic, and I hope that you enjoy them, and I hope that you have an opportunity to listen all the way through to all of the chosen videos that our artists have presented here, and that you'll learn more about them and through their bios and websites if you're interested. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you again to Tanya and Composers Now.
たる獣のごとく
happy and thrilled to be speaking here with Patricia Alessandrini. And we had a chance to meet for the first time in person at the Merkin Hall recently, where I heard her do a wonderful string quartet. So I was very happy that she was able to join us in this Composers Now curation series. And I think it makes sense actually to ask Patricia to maybe introduce some of her works in her own words. And here she is. Would that be okay to do?
Of course, Mia, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor, and it was so delightful to finally meet you after having you as a guest at Stanford, which is virtually. Um, and I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to talk about my work in this great format. Um, so I think the work that we're going to be looking at is Ada Song, which was commissioned by the Barbican. And so the first performance was performed by Marta Fontenay Simmons and the Britain Sinfonia. And then this version is actually for the AIMC, the AI Music Creativity Conference, played by the wonderful Schallfield Ensemble, and performed with the role of Ada Lovelace, incarnated by Marisol Montalvo.
Um, it's such an interesting way that all of these elements come together. How did the idea for this work originate?
So the original commission came because of an idea from Emily Howard, who is a researcher at PRISM, at Royal Northern College of Music. And so they're doing a lot of research on AI there, and they decided to do, as part of the Barbican series about creative AI, they decided to do an homage to Ada Lovelace. So for this piece, what I was thinking about was how to make machine learning processes visible and audible and comprehensible, perhaps, to an audience. Because what happens is there's a machine in the piece, the piano machine, which I had designed with Konstantin Leonenko at my former Goldsmith colleague when I was teaching there. Um, so the piano machine is actually learning from the ensemble, and then the piano machine reacts to it, and what it does is it causes the strings of the piano to sound. It mechanically excites them.
That's fascinating, and maybe talk a little bit about what kinds of artificial cognitive activity is going on, or what is the machine listening to then do something else. If it hears this, then it does something, for example.
Yes, so what I really want to do with this piece was to work in the timbral domain. So that is it's actually a work that's also composed with AI processes. Um, so the same material in the piano machine that has been generated for the piano machine and then generated by the piano machine is the same material as the ensemble, but it's really the way that it's articulated, and the kind of timbral colors of it, that are determined by the ensemble, because the piano machine actually, one of the reasons a lot of people say to me, why make another machine for the piano, right? There's already this clavier and there's other ways of doing it. One of the reasons is to have continuous control. So this machine has a continuous, because it's motors that are exciting the strings, so they're vibrating the strings over time. So you can actually have a lot of expression in that vibration. So it's really the expression, and that's what I often feel is missing in these AI situations, right? Like that's what we're talking about so much, is expressivity. So that's what I wanted to learn from the ensemble.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to hearing it again.
And thank you again so much for participating in this. And we really look forward to the clips that you've chosen for us to listen to.
Miya, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for having me.
So this is just to show how this patch is working. So for instance, you see here, there's measure 32, and it's choosing certain notes which go in here, and there's a selection of the range. So this is what we talked about more or less. I could put this a little bit higher, maybe for some of the next ones I'll do that. And so this is the pitches you see in red that it came up with, and they're written here, and you can hear the lower one, and that is what is this in the score, which I replaced from the open notes. So if we go to the next open one, that's on measure 33. So then I can just play this again, and now it's chosen two new notes. That's so maybe I say, well, that sounds a little bit too, I don't know, it doesn't sound that interesting, just the fifth is kind of close together. Maybe I'll try that again and see what it comes up with. That's a little more interesting, so I think I'll take that one for the next one. So that's just a little bit how that's working. And so if you don't like the notes, I can make new ones.
Each one is a helix. A helix vertices, och kanals, tief gut texter. let be.
right, we have Guillermo Galindo here with us today, and thank you so much. I'm very excited that you can be joining us.
Oh, thank you, Mia. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, of course. Let's see. I think it's really interesting to have you here today as a guest because your work inhabits areas in the visual art world as well as the music world. Can you talk a little bit about different kinds of how it is to navigate between the art world and the music world, and what comes to mind as interesting comments or things that might be interesting for the audience?
Well, my work has always been interdisciplinary, and I think that there's many similarities and places where different disciplines meet. And I want to add that my work has always been about crossing borders, not only physical or geographical borders, but borders between disciplines, border between religion, between gender, between races. I think that when we acknowledge the other or the other side is when things become more rich and more prolific. And at the same time, I have always been very curious about geography, about history, about the visual arts, about architecture. So I think exploring in other fields is not only important because one is taking a risk, but because it makes your art a lot richer.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, some of the work where you do talk about borders take place, for example, in Europe. One of your clips is from Finland. It takes place in Finland. And how do these very different geopolitical contexts or situations in situ affect how the work is perceived by the audience?
Well, I try to choose sonic objects or sonic devices that are that have an importance of themselves politically or socially, sometimes historically. And my first project, Border Cantos, was made many subject. I made many sonic devices out of detritus and personal objects from the immigrants that come through the Mexico-U.S. border. And my work in Documenta, in Eco Exodus, was integrated basically some wreckage boats from immigrants that came from the Middle East and Africa to Europe, to Greece in this case. And I moved those wreckage boats into Germany, and there's a clip also where I'm playing that. And from Border Cantos, my
can I just interrupt you? I have a question about the boats. What size boats were these that you brought in?
What size, you mean?
Yes, how large are they? The
they're
inflatable boats?
They're about 20 feet by 30 feet, something like that. I don't know. They're enormous. I mean, boats are really big on their own, but these are parts of boats. And even if they're parts of boats, they're still gigantic.
Okay.
You're gonna see, because in the clip you can see literally the human proportion against the boats with the musicians that are playing them.
And what kind of score or instructions do you use for the musicians to perform?
I use graphic scores and I use controlled improvisation and very specific notation that I have developed through the years.
And what are some, can you walk us through just briefly the different clips that you're going to be showing?
Yes, I wanted to integrate into this discussion clips of projects that haven't been seen that much in the internet. Basically, you see a lot about my work with Border Cantos, or the work in Documenta, or the graphic scores that I've been developing, or my visual arts work. But this time I wanted to integrate these two projects that are audience and participants, where they can experience in a way or another the being in a detention camp, or being hold in the borders of any kind, which I've been holding Mexico-U.S. border before I had a passport. And these spaces have a very particular way of being distributed. They are very cold places. I did this project in Finland with the architect Albert Brown, and we kind of created this maze out of portable fences. And prior to that, I instructed the students, which many of them were immigrants themselves, how it feels to be detained in a border, how to be detained in a detention center, or being held as a political prisoner. And I created this maze. We use all sorts of things to play the maze. We use, I told them to bring their passports, to make music with their passports, to make music with this very characteristic bread from Finland, from their native place, Jakobstad. And I kind of like this type of project because you kind of integrate non-musicians into this participatory experience. The second one is in Vanderbilt University, and I'm in Central Square in Nashville, in a site where we had Trail of Tears of the Native Americans. It was a passageway for Native Americans where they were transferring to other places, and it was also a slave market. So we kind of use a lot of objects to unearth the sounds, to take the sounds and to kind of exorcise the place. And we use things like shovels, like chains, things that are very significant of being detained, of being enslaved. And we're doing this as I would call it partly a ritual to unearth the sounds of slavery, the sounds of detention, and to liberate them, to make this open again.
Oh, that's very powerful. The topics of detention camps really resonate with me because my whole personal history with my parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles were in the Japanese American concentration camps, prison camps for 4 years during World War II. So anything with that topic is so meaningful for me, even though I'm not,
I resonate with you.
What's that?
We're resonating.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is extraordinary. Thank you so much, Guillermo. And it's wonderful to connect with you because we've been friends for many years. And it's really nice to be able to, to discuss your work like this and to get it known and have more visibility in this context of Composers Now. So I really also want to thank Composers Now. But thank you so much, and I know you're, and we really look forward to the clips that you've prepared for us. So
thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
One more. Perfect. Showstopper. One. Stop. Stop. Please stop here. Stop. Group C. Go to section 6. Section 6.
Hi, we are here with the composer, James Fay. And James, I'm so thrilled that you can join this Composers Now curation series. Really happy to have you here. Your ideas and compositions are always really interesting, and I'm so glad that we can have a chance to talk about them today. Maybe we can start with giving us a walkthrough of some of your clips that you've chosen for us.
Sure. Thanks so much for the invitation. Yeah, so the clips I picked, there are two excerpts of pieces, and they're not picked for any particular reason. I guess they're both pieces that are recently on my mind. The first one is called Sine of Merit 3, and it's a piece that I actually recently revised, but the performance here is from 2017. And the Sine of Merit series, it's a series of works that explore different aspects of my solo analog electronics practice. So each one kind of focuses on a particular process, a particular set of equipment. The first one was for the original buchla that's at Mills. And in this case, the third one, it's sort of about using only small speakers or small transducers. So the sounds are only going to small speakers on stage and not going into the house sound system at all. And the sounds are mostly produced through different feedback processes, either direct electronic feedback, but also electroacoustic feedback, feeding facts through the objects and with microphones into the air. The second piece is called Sound Slowed Down 1,000 Times. So this was a recent installation. It's an idea that I have for a while, thinking about, I guess in some ways, the old idea of changing from frequency to rhythm, which, you know, of course, kind of goes back to Henry Cowell and also Stockhausen and von Takte. But here, it's taking a sound, an audio file, and playing it essentially at 1,000 times slower than the regular speed. And here, this version is a memorial for Alvin Lucier, who was my teacher, who passed away this December. So it's become sort of a memorial piece. So here I'm using Alvin's voice. It's taken from the last voicemail I got from him, so it's just a greeting. And the voice is slowed down, so the speaker now is moving very, very slowly. So it's a piece about sound, but there's no intentional sound made. The speaker is just moving very slowly. So you're essentially seeing the speaker trace the waveform or the initial compression and decompression of air from his speech. Yeah, so those are the two pieces. Yeah.
That sounds fascinating. When going to the first piece, when you talk about the organizational compositional structure is around, I'm just trying to remember, that was a few minutes ago, was around the parameters of, you mean like velocity or rate of speed, or maybe can you walk us through or spell that out a little bit more?
Yeah, I guess it's mostly about a particular configuration of equipment and the process. I guess is in this case, it's very much influenced by David Tudor's approach to feedback in that you configure a chain of equipment in a particular way where it is self-oscillating or it kind of starts to have a certain behavior on its own through feedback. So the series is not necessarily all about feedback, but in this case, it's about sound feeding back, sound being projected, or vibrating, say, a tin lid that's also being picked up, being fed back through itself and then driving it again. And there are multiple of these feedback loops happening, as well as feedback loops within the electronics itself directly feeding back. So there are these feedback loops that are interconnected, but also operating independently. Yeah, and the piece in some ways, it's in the video you see it's quite different than how you would hear it in concert, because it's a relatively quiet piece, although in the clip you do get a little louder part. But the sound is very localized in the sense that because it's not coming through the house system, and this was played in a maybe 300-seat concert halls, was large-ish, it's a big space. The sound is very localized to the table. So there is that aspect of scale that I was interested in, of sound being in some ways small, which is kind of not something we generally do in electronic music, because we can kind of project it in this very diffuse way. So yeah, those were kind of the things I was concerned with that piece.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for giving us this introduction to your work and for choosing these clips for the audience. And we really look forward to watching and hearing them now.
Thanks so much for the invitation.